All right, welcome back to the deep dive. For this deep dive, you asked us to take a look at some Spanish language learning materials.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, and specifically, we're looking at a section from a Duolingo workbook for schools.
Interesting.
It's all about describing daily routines, and, it's a great idea to, brush up on your Spanish.
Absolutely.
What's really cool about this section is that it's not just about basic phrases. I mean, it really dives into vocabulary, grammar tips, even gives us some cultural insights.
That's fantastic. It's a very practical approach, wouldn't you say?
Totally. It feels like something you could actually use, in real life situations.
Absolutely.
So first up, we've got this vocabulary section. We see words like go to the park, watch a movie, shower. Definitely, everyday stuff.
Right.
But then there's go to the cinema, listed separately from watch a movie.
Oh, interesting.
Do you think going to the cinema has like a different cultural connotation for Spanish speakers?
That's a great observation. It's something that in many Spanish-speaking cultures, going to the cinema is an event in itself. It's a special outing. It's not just about passively watching the film. It's about the whole experience. Choosing a film, going out, maybe grabbing some popcorn, a drink afterwards.
Oh, okay.
It's really about the shared experience.
So they don't just see it as, watching a movie on your couch at home kind of thing.
Exactly.
They see it as a special event.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing.
That's fascinating how, language can give you these little windows into a culture's values.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, this workbook also has a grammar section. And, it kind of takes a deep dive into telling time in Spanish. Now, I remember this was always a struggle for me when I was learning Spanish.
Yeah, it can be tricky. Yeah.
It can be very tricky. So the workbook, it does a good job of breaking down how to use es la una for 10 and zeros and son las for the other hours. It explains that why and structure for, minutes after the hour.
Right.
But what about those minutes before the hour?
Yeah.
Like, it uses that menos less structure. And to be honest, I'm still a little confused by it.
Well, I can see why, yeah.
Saying 3 less 10 for 2.50 has always felt backwards to me.
Right. It can feel very counterintuitive. It's just a different way of conceptualizing time.
Okay.
It's like they're counting down the minutes remaining until the next hour instead of counting up from the current hour.
Oh.
So like 3 menos 10 literally translates to 10 minutes less until 3.
So it's like they're focused on the time remaining until the next hour.
Exactly, yeah.
Interesting. They're not looking back, they're looking ahead.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, and it looks like they even recommend like a supplementary lesson on Spanish Dict.
Yes, that's a great resource, yeah.
For anyone who wants to explore this further.
Yeah.
Okay, well then the workbook also includes a simple Spanish dialogue between two people talking about their routines. They chat about being tired, their sleep habits, their diet.
Right. Pretty relatable stuff.
Very relatable, yeah. I mean, who hasn't felt, I'm so tired, I feel awful.
Exactly.
Kind of day,
Yeah.
It's a universal experience.
Yeah.
Right.
But what I find interesting are the cultural assumptions that are kind of embedded in the dialogue.
Right. Like what?
For instance, they talk about having a light snack before bed and drinking decaffeinated tea in the evening.
Oh, interesting. You're right. I didn't even catch that on the first read through.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That suggests a very European sensibility around, food and sleep. It's this focus on moderation and, winding down calmly before bedtime.
So it's not just about learning the words.
Right.
It's also about understanding like the cultural context in which they're used.
Absolutely, yeah.
It adds another layer of depth to the learning process.
For sure.
I also love how the workbook actually encourages learners to think about their own routines.
Yeah, I love that too.
Translate them into Spanish, even practice with a friend.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way to put these new skills into practice.
It is. And the journal prompts, they really help you to make learning more personal, more engaging. They encourage you to go beyond simple translation and actually think about how you would express yourself in Spanish.
Right, yeah. And last but not least, we have this questions to answer section. This is where things get a bit more challenging, right?
Absolutely.
Huh.
So these questions, for example, does your mother go to the movies with her friends?
Okay.
They encourage you to build more complex sentences, consider different subjects, verb conjugations, even think about social norms.
That question about a mother going to the movies with friends,
Yeah.
it almost implies that's like a common activity in that culture.
That's an interesting observation, yeah.
Yeah. It's like these questions are kind of packed with these subtle cultural insights.
Exactly, yeah. They encourage you to kind of read between the lines and pick up on those unspoken assumptions within the language.
Wow. We've covered a lot of ground already.
We have. And I'm already feeling more confident about my Spanish skills.
Me too.
It's not just about, saying hello and ordering a coffee.
Exactly.
This workbook really provides the tools to kind of like navigate, daily life
Yeah,
in Spanish.
exactly. And it all comes back to, a core principle of language learning. It's about building connections, connections between words,
Yeah.
concepts, cultures.
And connections between people.
Absolutely.
It's great that the workbook encourages practicing with a friend.
Yeah.
Language is meant to be shared.
Of course it is. I mean, it's through those real-world conversations that we really solidify our understanding
Right.
and become more fluent.
Okay. Well, speaking of real-world conversations, let's look at some of the phrases in this workbook.
Okay.
We've got the classics like, ¿Cómo estás? How are you?
Mm.
¿A qué hora te levantas? What time do you get up?
Yeah, the basics.
Yeah, but there are a few that really stood out to me.
Oh, which ones?
For starters, the phrase, Estoy tan cansada que me siento fatal. They're like, I'm so tired.
Like the end of the world,
Yeah. It reminds us that language isn't just about, conveying information.
Right.
It's about expressing emotions and creating vivid images.
For sure. For sure.
It's interesting how they've woven these themes in,
Yeah.
alongside grammar concepts.
Right.
Speaking of which, we talked about the challenges of telling time in Spanish. But there's another grammar point I wanted to touch on.
Okay, what's that?
Reflexive verbs.
Ah, yes, of course.
Phrases like, me levanto, I get up, and se ducha, she showers,
Right.
really demonstrate this grammatical structure.
Yeah.
That can be tricky for English speakers.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
So for those unfamiliar, reflexive verbs are basically verbs where the action is performed by the subject on themselves.
Oh,
Right, so in English, we might say, I wash my face.
right.
But in Spanish, it's me lavo la cara, which literally translates to I wash myself the face.
Okay, so the action is reflecting back on the subject.
Exactly, yeah.
Like a mirror reflecting an image.
Exactly, yeah. Good analogy. And the workbook does a good job of, visually representing this with that verb conjugation chart for levantarse, to get up.
Right.
And it shows how that reflexive pronoun changes depending on who's performing the action.
Yeah, those visual aids can be so helpful.
They really can, yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how much we've been able to unpack from just this one section of the Duolingo workbook.
I know, right? It's really, it highlights how effective language learning goes beyond just memorizing, vocabulary lists and grammar rules.
Yeah, for sure. It's about creating that immersive experience. And this workbook does a really good job of that. It gives you that, that foundation.
This isn't about some abstract idea of Spanish.
Right.
This is about you using this language to express your unique self.
Yes, find your voice.
It's empowering.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And it's in those moments of self-expression that the real magic of language learning happens. To wrap up our deep dive, I think, the biggest takeaway for me is that living the language, it isn't just about acquiring words and grammar.
Yeah.
It's about opening yourself up to a new culture, a new way of thinking, a new way of seeing the world.
It's about broadening your horizons, connecting with new people, and experiencing life in a whole new way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to continue your language learning journey.
Yeah.
Remember, the world is full of fascinating languages and cultures just waiting to be explored.
It is.
So be curious, be bold, and don't be afraid to take that leap.
That's a perfect note to end on.
It is.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating topic.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those aha moments coming.